This conference will
Okay,
now
it's
be
now
recorded.
6:30 and I'll call this town council meeting to order. The first thing will be the invocation with Tom McGaffey from the Discovery Church. Good evening, sir.
Thank you for standing with me before the Lord. Our most gracious and heavenly Father, we stand before you invoking your presence. We ask the God of creation, the God of glory, and the God who formed all of heaven and earth to be present with us tonight. That you would bring your blessings when we don't deserve it, and you would bring your help when we need it most. I most thank you for the many men and women in this community that serve you unselfishly, and they serve our community, and they serve a God who loves each of us. And we ask that your Holy Spirit will be here, and any issues and concerns that come up, that the wisdom of a God Almighty would be present, and there would be harmony, and there would be peace, and there would be help in handling things that we can't handle ourselves. And we just ask for your mighty goodness in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I will now entertain any motions relating to the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to delay their conversation on chapter 12 until the line of sight issues in town are corrected. We still have a lot of issues where you pull up the stop sign and you can't see. And you're supposed to stop at the sign and the line, then you have to pull forward so you can see where you're going to get hit or not. So I think if our staff would be better used getting rid of the danger spots before we work on chapter 12.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second
Okay. Any conversation or discussion before we vote on
Mr. Mayor, I would only state that the content of the ordinance and the enforcement of the ordinance would not be changed on whether or not Public Works contacts homeowners or does that trimming of shrubbery themselves. The content of the policy would remain the same.
But the focus would be on the safety issue, not the right of way. And just coming over here, and I'd come the same way all the time as corner of Cedar and Fifth. You stop at the stop sign, you're looking at a bush, a pole, and a box. So you got to drive almost into the road so you can see who's coming at you from the left. And that's just one of many in the town, but that's one I pass every day. If you go on down Cedar and you get to Surfside Drive, you have the same thing. Where the stop sign is, there's a bush that you can't see around, so you've got to pull up to the street to see around it. I think those things are more important than the right of way. And that's why I made the motion.
Now, if we put this off and do it, then we're still gonna have to do it anyway.
Eventually, yes.
Right.
But let's use the labor, because he doesn't have unlimited labor. Let's use the labor where it'll do the most good the quickest. And then we come back and attack the other issues.
All right, Sherry?
Mr. Drake,
No.
Mr. Holder,
Yes.
Ms. Keating,
No,
Mr. Kinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Crackwell,
No.
Mr. Stamey,
Yes.
Mayor Hellier.
No. And how did that go?
Failed.
They failed.
Next thing is minutes approval for January 11th, 2023.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve the minutes from July the 11th of 2023.
Second.
Any discussion before we vote? Sherry?
Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Holder,
Yes.
Ms. Keating,
Yes,
Mr. Kinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Crackwell,
Yes.
Mr. Stamey,
Yes.
Mayor Hellier.
Yes. Next thing on the agenda is public comments, and these are public comments pertaining to the agenda items only. Anybody that would like to stand up for their?
Yes.
Robert Kraus, Fourth Avenue North, and also Chairman of the Peer Committee. This meeting's executive session contains an item to discuss negotiations related to the RFP for peer lease space. I'm here to urge council members to not enter executive session on this issue until the Peer Committee has reviewed the RFPs. And at our meeting, and if the executive session is held, I'm asking you to vote against final approval on the RFPs until the Peer Committee has reviewed them. The July 17th Peer Committee meeting had an agenda item to request these from the town. The administrator was able to come to that meeting, so I contacted him afterward, and he said that according to the Peer Committee charter, potential uses have been identified by the committee and communicated to the council. And that's with respect to our recommendation just to make the last Oceanward space a restaurant. That was not a specific recommendation. My response was that view of our charter is extremely limited, much more so than we, the Peer Committee, believe it should be. And I added our liaison to that communication, and the administrator said, let's let him weigh in. We haven't heard anything more. So I don't understand why the town council would want to bypass the committee it appointed to review these things, to assist the town in soliciting and executing prudent strategy and policy for the commercial use of the available space on the surrounding the Surfside Beach Fishing Pier. There's no valid reason, not time, because in many of our meetings, we've been told, just wait till construction's done and then you can bring your ideas forward. It's not information sensitivity. There was a social media posting saying that the content of the RFPs is confidential at this point, and it's not the role of the Peer Committee to evaluate RFPs, but that's in direct contravention to the beginning of the Peer Committee. We reviewed every RFP for all the available spaces from the beginning. That's the review that resulted in Painters, now Drippy's Ice Cream, and Perry's Bait and Tackle. That's the way we did it. And competence is certainly not an issue. This council responded very favorably to all the work the Peer Committee did through its presentations, comment on professionalism, comprehensiveness, well-researched, et cetera. So I don't see any way the town loses anything in allowing the Peer Committee to review these RFPs and do its job. Our recommendations aren't binding. You're free to do what you want. We understand that the council makes the decisions, we don't. But we've been living and breathing this project the last 18 months. Last time I was here, it generated a formal statement accusing the Peer Committee of simply an attempt to embarrass the town
Mr. Mayor,
council.
that's point of order. That,
Okay.
No.
That wasn't true then, and it isn't true now. So
Sir,
That-
with
those
all
were
due
public
respect,
comments.
you can't get up here and disparage the council.
I'm not disparaging.
I beg to differ. I beg to differ. This is my job, and you're disparaging the council. You can't do that. If you want to state your piece about your committee, that's fine, but when it comes to the council and the administrator and the employees, you cannot do that.
Okay, I don't see how that's disparagement, but I'll drop it.
Okay, thank you.
I attempted to get a formal response to my assertion about the scope of the Peer Committee, but I got nothing. So this is the only way I know to get response. So I guess if you people see it differently than we do in the Peer Committee, then I'm going to urge a different action in the executive session. If you don't think we're doing a good job, don't think we're useful anymore, I say, go ahead and vote and disband the committee. We have put too much time and effort into this to be considered an afterthought. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Good evening.
Good evening. Rod Schilling, 220 North Yopon Drive, also 780 Highway 17 South, with our S2 golf cars. Mr. Kinkin, thank you for bringing up the fact of maybe taking a look at the possibility of making sure that we look at the city's business as far as line of sight and some of these things that are coming about before we go to homeowners and change an ordinance that was just put into place of 3 feet in, 18 inches up. If you guys want to do that, and he brought up a couple of good situations as well, but Oak and Surfside, you've got power meters on the corner there with foliage growing up through it. I myself go that way to work every day. You stop at that stop sign, there can be somebody standing there waiting to cross the crosswalk and you can't see him. You can hit him for where the stop line is. Those are the things that he's talking about. Those are the things that the city needs to look at to say, have we cleaned our own garbage up before we go after the homeowners? The homeowners have grown beautiful pindo palms or whatever at the end of their driveways on a regular basis. Mailboxes are parked in the right of ways on a regular basis. We're trying to clear out the line of sight, or if there's an evasive action or whatever that needs to be done. But yet the ultimate goal seems to be, can we make it a parking spot? I myself have in the front of my home, have area which 10 feet from the driveway and 30 feet from the corner, there isn't room for even a golf cart. But yet we've got pivot parking on the Hawaiian days saying, go ahead and park there. It'll be cool tonight. And I go, no, it's not. It's either the ordinance or it isn't the ordinance. You either do it or you don't. So what did it do? It forced us to say, okay, well, how can we get, they've got the ordinance in place now where we can put our rocks. They're movable objects. They're less than 18 inches tall. They're less than 3 feet, or they're more than 3 feet from the corner. It'll keep people from parking there and breaking the law so they don't have to get a ticket. But now we're talking about maybe making us get rid of those rocks to where we have to spend that money. All he is saying is let's take a look at our own stuff first. Let's take a look at what the city has put into place or allowed over the time that this has been a town, and say, are we really going to scrape off every piece of every foliage on every street before you guys take care of what you need to take care of? That's it. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, the next thing is communications, and under communications, we have the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce with Karen Reardon. Good evening.
Good evening, and thanks for having me tonight. So I'm here to just do an overview of the 23 and now fiscal 24 campaign to give you a sense of what we are doing, and then also talk about budgets this evening. So we continue to work on a campaign that we call Beach with the Best that we started last year in the spring. And again, we are doing lots of new executions of that. You can see people that are out fishing, people that are enjoying the beach, eating out, as well as attending a lot of our attractions to, again, show the full range of the fun things that people can do here on the Grand Strand. Our campaign is designed that we have one layer of it that we call Always On. And what I mean by that is it's evergreen. So we are promoting the Grand Strand 52 weeks a year. So we feel like we need to have this baseline of promotion so that at any point where a traveler is thinking about going on vacation, they're going to be finding our messaging, whether that's in January, thinking about the spring, or whether that's now thinking about a fall trip. We need to be able to catch them during the course of the year. And then what we do is we layer on specific promotions. So right now, not surprisingly, we have a lot going on for the summer season to finish strong. July has been very strong so far. We want to finish out strong through August and into Labor Day. So we continue again with bright, colorful advertising creations that really do emphasize family. As you can see, there's a lot that's about fun, and just again, how much you can do up and down the Grand Strand. So we continue to talk about that 60 miles where you belong, and just emphasize a lot of the things that we can do and families can do on top of going to the beach, which of course is still the number one thing that people want to do. So just again, lots and lots of executions. And one of the reasons we need all those different executions is that different things appeal to different people. So sometimes we're appealing to mom, sometimes we're appealing to dad, sometimes we're appealing to couples. So we've got a lot of different photographic executions and headlines so that we can catch people depending on what it is that they are interested in. We also continue to do group work. Why is that important? Well, our group business, meetings, conferences, conventions, that creates a lot of stability for us. Those groups tend to stay for the whole week, and they stay midweek, which is again, very, very important business for us. It's different than the leisure vacation business. So we are seeing that finally after 2020, 21 was good, 22 is a little bit better, but 23 has been the best so far in terms of group tours. We're getting our motor coaches back. The convention center in Myrtle Beach is pretty much full at this point. And as you well know, sports is full tilt everywhere. Every pickleball court is full, tennis, volleyball, basketball, baseball, softball. We have a lot of groups here on top of our own kids and grandkids playing all these sports. So again, very, very important business for us. And so we're in specialty magazines that are reaching out to these business planners that decide to take their group someplace, and we want them to decide to come here. These are our strategic markets for the fiscal year that we're in now. As you can see, we're still in a number of really important markets that have been our traditional strongholds. North Carolina and South Carolina continue to be our strength, but all of the Mid-Atlantic, certainly Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and it's not your imagination. Ohio is a stronghold, as is Pennsylvania, and we're starting to branch out a little bit further west. And the other thing that we've really seen in the last 12 months is that we keep continuing to creep further north. So as we get some additional airline service, we have more people visiting here from New York, from New Jersey, but also from places like New Hampshire, which really wasn't happening pre-COVID. So it's very interesting to see that they're discovering the Grand Strand, and we hope that they like it enough that they come back like a lot of our other visitors do year over year. So this is our messaging schedule. So it just shows you again that year-round coverage. Then right now we're doing our summer overlay, Beach with the Best. We're also starting to do a little bit of international work. This is the most meaningful international advertising and marketing we've done since COVID. Our focus has been on Great Britain and Canada, of course. So those two markets are our most important international markets. We've been doing a little bit more of a push. We're going to do some more with the Restaurant Association around our restaurants. We're calling that Shine and Dine. So again, we want people to know about all the great food offerings that we have here. And we've also been emphasizing this summer our live music scene. Confession, I stopped on the way because it was early. I stopped over at Benjamin's to get something sweet to eat. And they have live music tonight. They've got a number of people there playing the guitar. And that's not uncommon, right? That's happening all the time. It's happening at Neil and Pam's. It's happening at all these restaurants. And that's happening up and down the Grand Strand. So again, it's something that our visitors didn't necessarily expect when they came here, but they're finding they really like it, and it's really adding a lot to the experience. So we're trying to emphasize that a little bit more for people so that they know that that's an option when they're out to eat. And then, as I mentioned before, air service. We do work with the airport and with the airlines to try to do co-op promotions with them to continue to drive air service. Our carriers have struggled a little bit in the last year. It's been all over the national newspapers about Southwest, Spirit, recently Delta. I mean, there's been lots of problems with service, but we are still seeing about 5% of our total visitation coming by plane. And that's still very, very important visitation because most of those people stay longer. They stay all week because they don't have to spend a day driving here, and they don't have to spend a day or two driving back. So they elect to stay longer and spend more and stay in our hotels longer. So want to continue to focus that. So Surfside Beach targeted promotions and content has been very robust. I want to stop for a second and say that I feel like the collaboration between Visit Myrtle Beach marketing team and Surfside Beach is the best that has ever been in my 5 years. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. We really enjoy working with Tabitha Hull. She's been doing a fantastic job. We communicate frequently, and we really do feel like we have a very strong sense of all of the festivals and events and everything that is going on, so that we can appropriately promote that and focus on that very heavily. So you can see lots of different things that we're doing on social, video, digital, just again, integrated content, which is a combination of doing something that's in print, but also in digital and maybe streaming. So just a lot going on here. And we're just really, really happy with the level of collaboration that we have right now. We think it's really paying off. One of our big focus areas in the last year has been to completely revamp our website. It's a monster site. It's very, very large. The content constantly needs to be curated and refreshed. And so we've done that. Surfside Beach is prominently featured there. I'm very happy to report we're at a point now that this website's working so well that it's getting 10 million visitors coming to the website. So again, that's a lot of eyeballs, a lot of people staying. And some of the stats that we have show that they're staying a little longer on the site and exploring a lot of things to do. So that's really good. So consistently updating that main community landing page for Surfside Beach is paramount. And again, thanks to the communication that we have, we're able to do that pretty much proactively, on a dime. So there's a lot of flexibility there, which is great. We've been writing a lot more articles and listicles that get you up into those top 10 lists, those top 20 lists, which the news media also loves to pick up and run with. And really, again, featuring a lot of what's going on in dining, but also in live events. So you can see, again, we've been putting more and more on the calendar, really populating that so it's vibrant and dynamic and makes people feel, rightly so, that there's a lot to do here. Again, you see this whole section on the best restaurants in Surfside Beach. So a total feature being able to allow people to really see what's located here and what they can get into. We continue to work with Sensory Friendly. That's the effort that we've been doing in partnership with Champion Autism Network. They have now the card, which it can be shown by the visitor to the restaurateur. So the restaurant staff knows, okay, I'm working with a family that's got a child on the spectrum or a family member on the spectrum. So they can do some extra touches to really make that family feel welcome. One of the things that they do is they almost always serve the food in a to-go box. So if about halfway through the meal, the child is having a problem and really needs to get out of that environment, they don't have to flag the waiter and quickly try to get the boxed lunch or dinner. They just can get up and they can quickly pay their check and they can leave. And we're getting a lot of really, really positive feedback that families appreciate that extra care and concern. So we're going to continue to lean into that. You see a ton of brand new photography. We've completely refreshed our photo library. So we've got a lot of really, really great, wonderful new photography. And that's something that we're just going to continue to do all the time. It really makes a difference. People notice when things are looking tired or looking stereotypical. And of course, one sin that we do not commit is that we do not put a photo out pretending that it's Surfside Beach or North Myrtle Beach for that matter when it's not. And I can assure you that some destinations do that. They just take a generic beach picture and they try to fool people. But our visitors are smarter than that. They know. And so we need all of our photos to be authentic. Doing a ton in social media. It's really taking off. Again, people love to send their own selfies in, their own what we call user-generated content. We take it and they give us permission to use it, and then we are pushing it out there. Their friends and family sees it, and it starts to go much more viral and get much more coverage. This is what I was referencing before. Sessions are up almost 43%, and the number of users going to the website for visit surfsidebeach.com is up almost 45% year over year, which is fantastic. And again, page views mean, again, what are they doing? They're not just going to the one front page, the home page, but they're actually circulating around, looking at a lot of different sub pages, which again bodes well. So you can see a bright blue, spark up there, July 2023, as these sessions have really zoomed way up. One other thing that we're working on that I just wanted to mention that's still ongoing, but we want to thank you for hosting us. We did a session here on June 8th that was a town hall, a listening session as part of the planning process there we're doing for a long-range 10-year destination stewardship plan. So this is really working with an outside consulting company that's been coming into the market, really hearing from our residents and hearing from our businesses what's important and how do we continue to protect our most valuable resource, which is the beach, which is the land, which is our water quality, all of those things that make us special and is why people come to see us. We need to protect those assets so that they're here 50, 70, 100 years from now. And so we think the stewardship plan is going to be very important, and we will be sharing it with you when it's finished. The estimated time to have the entire plan finished is late fall of this year. So we will be back to share that with you, but we really appreciate you hosting one of the sessions. We had a second session in Myrtle Beach as well, and it was well attended, and I think the conversation was terrific. So this is the estimated value of Surfside Beach marketing that we do for you every year. So we have our finance and marketing department work together and take a look at all of the things that we've put together in marketing, and then calculate out what we call impressions, which essentially is the eyeballs. How many people have seen these images, these websites, emails, content, and so forth. And so next to each kind of area of media, whether it's social or public relations or a paid ad on TV or the website, we've put the number of impressions that have been calculated and then what the estimated value of that is. So you can see right now, based on the last 12 months from July 1 of 22 through June 30th of this year, as the fiscal has ended, that we have generated approximately 2.4 billion impressions. So that's, again, people seeing favorable content about Surfside Beach. And if we had to buy all of those impressions, it would be worth about $10 million. And that's what they call a sort of an advertising equivalent. So just wanted to share that with you. So obviously we don't want to spend $10 million for those impressions. We want to be able to do that more affordably. So this is what the proposed budget looks like for Surfside Beach going into this fiscal, which began just a few weeks ago. So we are proposing, based on all the estimates that we have from our financial advisors, that the proposed amount of money that would represent the amount coming to us as your DMO would be just a little over $300,000, $313,000 to be exact. And we're proposing that we invest it similarly to the way we did this past year, with just a small percentage, 2% going again to that airline service, 6% going to destination public relations, publicity, 64%, a big chunk of this budget would go towards the digital advertising we've been doing because it's been very cost effective. We have 5% or $15,000 going into the general consumer promotions, 1% of the budget going to that group effort that I mentioned, 2% of the budget going towards research, and 21% of the budget going for television, which is still an important medium for us because people can see the images. Obviously, it's sight and sound. Of course, the way people are watching television is a little bit different than it was just a few years ago. Some of it's on traditional TV, but a lot more of it is on people's computers as they're streaming their favorite shows. But we are still in those TV pods so that they can see our messages and our advertising. So that is our proposal right there. And then what we did from an accountability standpoint is we gave you a quick snapshot. We don't have April through June yet, since that just closed, but from January through March, the investment that we spent was just a little over $28,000, again, from the previous year's fiscal budget. And you can see, again, how we invested that with a high percentage being in television, destination publicity, and again, digital being number one. We also had just under 20% of the budget, or about $5,300, on outdoor advertising, so the billboard advertising. A lot of that, again, out of state and close to airports, suggesting that people hop on a plane and come here for their vacation. So I wanted to share that with you as well. And then this is just a slide that we had put together, I think, last year that we wanted to continue to give to you every year so you can see a progression. So going back in 2019, you can see what the total collection of ATAX was, just a little over $726,000. Despite COVID, it still went up for total ATAX collected at $750,000. In 21, it zoomed up to $863,000. In 2022, it zoomed up to its highest watermark ever at over $1.1 million collected in ATAX. And this year's forecast is very similar. It's just 0.5% higher. It's projected that the total would be 1.143,334. And so that's what you see. We calculated out the 30% of that would come to us as your Tourism Bureau at the 313,000 level. The other 830,334 would be going here to the town of Surfside Beach. The other part of ATAX, as you well know, is that there is a 5% holdback. And so I always like to update this for you so that you're aware of it. I know it's something that we have talked about before as it relates to the pier and the business committee, as we've been looking at that and preparing for that in the future. Your balance right now sitting in the bank is $99,151. And the forecasted addition that's going to be added to that is $15,650. So you will have a sum of just shy of $115,000 that can be spent on extra things that you would like to do on top of the $313,000 that we'll be spending. So that's when we're talking about special celebrations, but then also a year-round focus on driving people to Pier Village so that we can really activate the pier when it's ready to be activated. So just again, wanted to give you that update, but we're excited to see that budget's been growing. So that gives the town a sizable amount of money to work with to really do something meaningful with, which I think is important. And again, these are some of the communications pieces that we're using right now that I encourage everyone to always look at. Our annual report, if you scan this QR code, is there. Visit Myrtle Beach CDB, visit Myrtle Beach Area CDB.com has a lot of our stats and research right there on the web page where you can just click on the link and read the statistics and the data that we collect on visitation. And we update that every day. So as we have new information and new research, we just pop it onto that site, and that's open to the public for anyone to read. And with that, I thank you for your time and would take any questions that you might have.
I'm glad to see that the town of Surfside is working more with you and we're collaborating and getting stuff done.
It's going
Definitely
really,
to our advantage.
it's going really well. I'm very pleased as well.
Very good. Karen, I just saw recently that May and June air arrivals were down. Is that because of the problems getting airplanes off the ground?
Yes, it's capacity. Now,
Okay.
the news made a big deal of that. It was only dipped 0.5%. So it wasn't this huge steep decline.
It's been
But it's
going
been
up like
going
that.
this, and it's been capacity. It's because Southwest has canceled some flights, Spirit has canceled some
Okay.
flights. So
That's what I figured it was, but just wanted to ask.
It is. So, and it has made travelers pretty frustrated. But they are trying valiantly to try to get those kinks worked out so they can get all the flights in here that we were promised. So hopefully that's starting to smooth out a little bit.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Well, we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Next thing on the agenda is the pier update. And I hear that Chief Clements is not here tonight, so
That's correct.
you're gonna be handling that. So
Okay.
let's do it.
Mr. Mayor and Town Council, good evening. We did have our weekly pier committee update and just a few items to make you aware of. The punch list items continue to be completed. The handrails are being coated at this moment. The bolts change out, the shade structure is being worked on. The ADA ramp, there's some revisions that were being reviewed today. Hopefully we can get that completed this week. The insulation underneath the podium and the pier, there's some questions regarding the manufacturer that needed to answer. The pier access gates, I believe John Adair met with those members today. The shade structure stain, there's a moisture content level within the wood itself that has to be at a, say, 15 or 16%, and it's at 29%. So what we decided to do, and to not hold up anything, is to get a credit for the stain, and then John Adair and his crew, once that moisture level is down to a level so that we can actually stain the structure, then we'll apply that to the building itself. There's a couple of requests for information items, such as the downspout, that's being reviewed by both parties. And then the interior stair rail, there's some code issues there, and so those punch list items are being resolved this week. That's all.
Anybody have any questions?
And Mr. Mayor, just one thing, I say it virtually every meeting. Are we giving the architect and the engineer deadlines to have their responses back? I mean, I find it absolutely ridiculous that we are still debating details over insulation for 2.5 years. We're still talking about the proper color of white or finish or whatever on handrails, again, for 2.5 years. At this point, it's just looking obstructive to completing the project. If we can't give them a deadline that says you need to figure out what this material needs to be and identify a material that agrees with the spec of the manufacturer, but also with the spec that we've been putting forward, and get on with it. I mean, we've got air conditioning in 2 of the buildings right now, and there's not a single condensation inside any building. So when you're coming up through a foot-thick slab of concrete, what is an 1/8 inch of foam insulation gonna do for you? I mean, these things have to be resolved, and we can't keep talking about them and keep changing material and, oh, what about this, what about that, and dreaming up new excuses not to move forward with some of this stuff.
And I agree. I mean, I think a lot of these issues that I just mentioned about punch list and shade structure and the podium and the insulation, they've been discussed for the last 6 months. And I know per the contract that all 3 parties have a timeline to answer the questions. And I think on all occasions, all 3 parties have been delinquent on that. So, but we're at the final stages, we're still looking at August 8th, not going good. So, we'll see.
Do you really think August 8th is doable?
If it's not August 8th, it's going to be, I would say, within that week time frame. We have some punch list items to complete, and we have some rails to put up. And so I think that's the biggest for us.
Mr. Mayor, when we talk about putting people on deadlines, are we going to put everybody on deadlines? If we go to put one person on deadline, are we going to put all of them on deadlines to get done?
I would say my understanding is when you hired Collins Engineering, that everyone was officially put on deadlines. Are those deadlines being met? I would say probably not.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Now, for the finance report. Diane's not here tonight.
Yes, she is unable to attend, so if there's any questions, just please direct them to me and I'll give her the questions. Give them an answer.
Mr. Mayor, are we going to get the statement of the pier costs? It was not attached in our packets as it has been.
It was not completed when the packages went out, so, but you will.
Okay.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
Your comment before we move on? Among other things, dealing with the plaque issues, both the commemorative plaques that we're going to be selling on the pier itself and the dedication plaque right down on the base of the pier. The administrator and I spoke a little bit about it. We're going to speak more about it in the next coming couple of weeks, but I just wanted the council to be aware. 2 of the top items we're considering, you all can look at these. One would be for the dedication plaque, would be a bronze casting, and one would be a granite plaque. One will be larger than the other, and the cost difference is significant. So if anybody has a comment on that, please direct it to the administrator, and we'll take it certainly into consideration. Of course, it would list the council, very similar to the one that's on the firehouse. It would list the mayor, the council, administrator, the designer, and all that, contractor. And the bronze casting would be 30 by 30, and the granite, the biggest they can do is 30 by 20. It'd be a black granite with white lettering. So consider that, roll it around in your heads, if you don't mind. And also, I'd like to show you all some of what's being considered for the commemorative flags that we plan on selling for installation on the pier railing. Because we're interested in different shapes, the aluminum wasn't the right material. I want to pass these down. It's more of a 2 mil heavy-duty UV resistant plastic. If you pass them down, so we could do shapes of turtles and fish and things like that. And people can have a few lines of text on there, and we could sell those similar to what we do with the Veterans Memorial Wall. Similar to that. Those won't be available for a little while, but as soon as probably by the time the pier opens, we'll have a plan, and we'll have an application process at the front desk, all like similar to the Veterans Wall. The cost, that we haven't set it yet, but it'll likely be in the $250 to $300 range for a plaque. The Marsh Walk in Arizona charges $500 for a 4x6, and these are slightly larger than that.
How long do these last?
They're supposed to last a good long time.
But the ones down at the Marshall, aren't they,
They're just a brass,
brass
rectangle.
instead of plastic?
Yeah, you could do that,
I mean,
but it'll turn with the salt there, and it's not really attractive. So we were hoping to mix in some shapes with the sea life and give people options. We'll have 4 or 5 different options at the counter, and they can all be reversed, either blue on white or white on blue. They could do it either way.
Mr. Mayor, where are you planning to put in all these, on the railings or?
Yeah, under the top rail.
Under the top rail?
Yeah.
Okay, all the way down.
Yeah, we've got close to 1,300 feet to play with.
Yeah, we went to Carolina Beach, in North Carolina, and they have these flags, but they have designed fish, a lot of fish on theirs. Instead of the turtles, they use the fish design with the same flag.
Yeah, these can be computer cut,
Yes.
laser cut to the shapes that we want. So we'll have 4 or 5 offerings with 2 color options. So we'll have about 8 to 10 different offerings for the public. I'll collect those later.
Are we still planning on doing the pavers in the parking lot or the walkways?
No, the paper idea, we tossed it around a bunch of times. I did meet with the pier committee, we talked about it. Anything on the ground in the pier parking lot is problematic for a couple of reasons. We tried that with the Veterans Memorial with bricks on the ground, and they quickly became faded and dirty and unreadable. And with the propensity of the pier parking lot to flood with a foot of water on it, they're all gonna move around and have to require a lot of maintenance to be put back the way they're supposed to be. So I think the best answer is to go vertical on a vertical surface, and what better vertical surface than the pier railings.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next thing is a discussion over the copyrights of the mural lady.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Tommy Simpson has submitted a proposal to the town to consider purchasing the rights of Mural Lady to be marketed with other town items for sale. Mr. Simpson would like to give the town the first right of refusal. The copyrights of the lady could be advertised similar to the 4th of July t-shirts that the town printed and were sold, as well as other paraphernalia. And over time, we think the copyrights of the lady cost will pay for itself. In fact, the proposal for the copyrights of the ladies being offered in the amount of $3,500. If approved by council, the town attorney can draft the legal agreement.
Now, when we talked earlier, you were talking about that they wanted to refresh the lady.
Yeah, he split up the proposal, and one was also to refresh the lady on the Borgata building. However, I think Tapter's working with her group to see if there's other private funds that could pay for the refresh of that thing. Instead of-
Because that's not our building.
And that's,
So, I mean,
That's
for us to refresh a painting on somebody else's building,
and that's the issue I have using public funds on a private building.
or perhaps they want to use a facade grant in order to do that, but that's a matching grant of like 5,000. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was told that the original picture, the mural is a copy of another mural that was painted back in the 50s at a railroad station. Have we done any investigation as to whether there is a valid copyright on this image to be had?
We have not, but we could look at it. It could be contingent upon that.
Yeah, because, I mean, I was told that was just a copy of something that had been produced, back in the 50s. Now, I haven't done any research into finding out if that was true or not. But, there are a couple other entities within the town that have rights to use that image on, other, trivets and coffee cups and so forth. So before voting or, saying I want to go forward with $3,500 for copyrights, I think we need to validate whether he has such rights to sell. Because it seemed to me that it was a very public image that was just recreated for our purposes. And second, I had heard that there are other additions being considered for the Borgata building, such that maybe that wall may not be available for a mural in perpetuity.
Understand there are plans in the future.
I mean, they've already put a door in it and a bar thing. So they've already taken some of the picture away. And, I don't know, but there's a lot of merchants in town that have inventory of cups and mugs and stuff like license plates and everything else that have been selling it for years.
Well, and they had Tommy's approval to use the image.
Oh, they did?
Yes.
That's
I
correct.
didn't know that.
He's given some rights to some vendors, and he's also sent letters of violation to others.
That's something we may want to
Do you
consider.
need anything from us tonight?
Either or, you could approve it contingent upon us verifying the image itself through the town attorney, or we can bring it back to you indicating that it's either validated or not.
Is it inclusive, our mural when we buy it for this? I mean, the rights to it, or is it still other people would have rights to use it too?
We're buying the rights to the design itself.
So we'll own it completely?
Yes, sir.
So then,
Not the
Anybody-
image on the building, but the rights to the lady itself.
but if anybody prints it or uses it,
Then we would have to send out
Same.
letters to those individuals.
okay, that's what I want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Mayor, I would recommend that we wait and validate the viability of the copyright in the first place.
I think everybody's in agreement with
Make sure it's on.
that. So if you'll investigate that and bring it back to us, and then we'll act on it. Next thing on the agenda is in the business item, it's the first reading of ordinance 230957, chapter 12, streets, sidewalks, beaches, and other public places. John Adair.
And Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we accept for first reading ordinance 23-0957, making some editorial changes to chapter 12.
Second.
I have a question for you on this.
Certainly.
You heard the comments that we had earlier about the right-of-ways being obstructed.
I did.
Some of the town right-of-ways. Is there any action that's been going to take care of that prior to the other?
Well, it's more of a concurrent situation. Things constantly grow and we trim back what is the town's responsibility, and the code enforcement officer writes letters to folks who have to trim their own items back. There was a bush mentioned at Fifth Avenue North and Cedar earlier by someone, and that letter has been written to that homeowner to take care of it. I know that for a fact, because the code enforcement officer told me that last week. But that keeps growing. We've years ago, before we had a code enforcement officer, we would have to trim stuff. But by rights, the homeowners should be contacted and told they need to trim their items down, especially if it's in a side triangle.
Mr. Mayor, is that considering if that's in the town right away, or is that on the homeowner right away?
Well,
Property.
it really depends on what the item is and where it was planted. If it's something on private property that's growing over into the right of way, it's the homeowner's responsibility to keep it trimmed off of the right of way. If it's something that's on the right of way that the town owns, or if it's a tree, even if it's a private tree that the limbs are hanging too low over the road, that trucks can't get by, it's under this height clearance, then we don't require anybody to do it but us, to maintain that safe travel for cars and trucks.
If it's hanging over to the town's property, if I have a tree and it's hanging over town's property, do you not have the right to go ahead and trim that tree off?
Oh, sure, we have the right to do it, but it's just way too numerous of violations for us to do it, for the town staff to do it. We, for years, we did it when we had to eliminate line of sight problems. But, being that we have a code enforcement officer now and there is a code on line of sight issues, 25-foot side triangle on every corner, we'll take care of our own, and private property responsibilities will take care of their own.
If there was one that's on private property, right? And you send them a letter stating that it needs to be cleared out and they don't do it, then what do you do?
Well, so the code enforcement officer will give them a notice of violation, a summons to court. Ultimately, we can come in, I mean, like any property maintenance code violation, if it's not taken care of, we can get a directive, a health order from the administrator, and we can go and do it and bill the.
Assess them.
Yeah, exactly.
But wouldn't it be just as simple for the town to go ahead and clean that property since it's in line of sight of the traffic, instead of trying to force a homeowner to do that? Wouldn't it be, I mean, it's already there and it's in the line of sight of traffic.
Yeah.
I mean, the telephone or power company comes by our house, they don't stop at my house and ask me if they can trim a tree out of the power lines. They trim them out and move on. So I'm saying, if that tree's in the line of sight in our area, you ought to have the right to go cut it without even sending them a bill. I mean, sending them a letter.
And we have done that.
And that's the way it ought to work, whether.
It's just a matter of manpower. And if something's planted, people have a tendency to plant trees and bushes right on their property line without envisioning how they're going to look when they're mature. So as a result, you have big draping trees like crepe myrtles and whatever, and pampas grasses and the like, 3, 4, 5 feet, especially on corners, into the right of way. So we just don't have the manpower at the time. I think Mr. Kinkin alluded to that earlier. We just don't have the time to spend on, in addition to everything else we do, to go and correct all these problems. The onus should be on the person who planted the thing.
Mr. Mayor, let me ask John a question. I mean, I know you only limited so much people to do stuff, but you're eliminating the word permanent, and we're putting stuff in the right of ways. Whether it's.
Well, it's a different conversation. Okay.
I know, 3 feet over,
Yeah.
da, da, da. Well, they're gonna continue to grow. They continue to get bigger. Code enforcement's gonna have to go out and write more and more things that goes on to trim it or move it or something else. When does it ever end? I mean, you're gonna have a.
Well, you make a good point, but this is, yeah, I hear where you're coming from, but the council deliberated this issue for months last year. And what the ordinance that was agreed upon at the very end in September by a majority vote was that we would issue encroachment permits upon application for low, soft landscaping and 1221D. If people so desired to put in low, soft landscaping, at least 3 feet from the town road and 3 feet, no bigger than 3 feet high. And we would issue an encroachment permit to that. I've done one so far.
Yeah.
The issue is that the word permanent comes into play because it brings in, you know, you have your black, you have your white, but then you have gray. You know, all these things, and I brought a couple of props in, all these things that you see in the right of way, rocks, planters, things like that, which somebody can come back at you and say, well, it's not permanent. The ordinance says permanent, so therefore I don't have to move it. It becomes a sticking point. So by deleting just the word permanent, and that's all this is that little housekeeping item. This isn't a re-debate of the entire ordinance that was had last year. This is removing the word permanent so it can be more enforceable. So we can go and say, hey, look, this is allowed, but this is not allowed. So there's no, well, this is movable, so it's not permanent, so you can't make me move it.
Well, again, is it gonna be a hedge permanent because it's roots and it's growing in the ground, or is it a post in concrete? It's still permanent. You can't pick it up.
Well,
move it.
according to the ordinance, a post in concrete wouldn't be allowed.
I know, but I'm just saying the plant. I'm using a
Yeah,
plant.
Just a post in the ground.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be allowed either, because that doesn't fall into low, soft landscaping. That's not anchored to the ground structurally, or too heavy or massive to be easily moved, or may cause damage to a vehicle in an emergency situation. So if it doesn't meet that criteria, we can't give an encroachment permit for it. Only low, soft landscaping, such as flower beds and bushes and things like that, that are kept under 3 feet. And I'm just asking to remove the word permanent to make it more clear to everybody, so there's not 5 interpretations of what the ordinance is.
So if somebody disagrees with you, what do? I mean, I assume you're the one making the decision.
Well, it'll be a combination of the code enforcement officer and myself will be going out and taking an inventory of, we met with the attorney very recently, as I said, 2 weeks ago. And we have to go and take a list of everybody who is in violation, who does not have an encroachment permit for what they have in the right of way. And they have to be advised of what the ordinance is, and they have to be given time to get into compliance with the ordinance. And that's the next step. But before we go to that step, we have to resolve this.
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna use,
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Stamey's already spoken twice on this subject. Sorry.
So that's what we're requesting in this cleanup of this ordinance that was passed last year is a 2-word deletion. It's a change in another section about distances around the emergency lane at the pier. And it's a small change to the glass bottles on the beach. Instead of 150 feet and 100 feet around the pier emergency lane, it's reduced to 25 and 50. And then in 1268, making specific mention, and Chief Hoffman can address this if he would like, instead of just throwing or depositing glass bottles on the beach, which is what it said before, which is kind of vague. It's basically, it's unlawful to have glass bottles on the beach, which has always been the intent of the ordinance, but it wasn't clear in the language. So now it'll be clear in the language. And that's all we're requesting.
Just one more question. In changing the distance from the pier for the emergency access, that does not include the space under the pier. Is
No,
that correct?
No, that's correct.
Just
Yeah.
boundaries on the side.
Yeah, the intent is to not seat people in the emergency lane to the north, to the other side of the swash of that lane, and to the south, 25 feet to the south of that. So doesn't go into
So
the
everybody
pier.
that seeks the shade of the pier can
Yeah,
stay under
exactly.
the pier.
If we don't change it, then they can't.
Right.
So we're trying to clear that up.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions before we vote on this? Sure.
Mr. Drake,
Are we voting on each one separately or all of it at once?
Voting on the first one, which is A,
Okay?
230957.
All changes to chapter 12.
Chapter 12.
Yeah, those 3 items that I spelled out.
So we're not going to vote on each individual.
Well, we
Okay.
haven't gotten on to chapter 9 yet. We're gonna do that one next. Okay, Sherry?
Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Holder,
Yes.
Ms. Keating,
Yes.
Mr. Kinkin,
No.
Mr. Kreckall,
yes.
Mr. Stamey,
Yes.
Mayor Hellier.
Yes. Okay, the next one on the agenda is the first reading of ordinance 230958, chapter 9, motor vehicles and traffic.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. On June the 27th of this year, the town administrator discussed with council an opportunity through Pivot Parking to collect outstanding fines unpaid by violators. And with that discussion, part two, it was mentioned that a few minor changes were necessary to amend the contract for verification. There's approximately $28,000 in outstanding fines from violators that may be collected by Pivot Parking and would require an amendment to the ordinance authorizing them to provide this service. And then secondly, for clarification purposes, the overview of services defines scope and locations of enforcement. So there will be two motions, one to approve the amendments to the contract and the others to go make a motion to approve the first reading of chapter 9.
Okay, one is to change chapter 9, the other is to change the contract.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who wants to make a motion on the first one?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to accept for first reading ordinance number 23-0958, making a modification and amendment to chapter 9.
Second.
Okay, any discussion before we vote on that? Sherry?
Mr. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Holder,
Yes.
Mrs. Keating,
Yes.
Mr. Kinkin,
Yes.
Mr. Kreckloff,
Yes.
Mr. Stamey,
Yes.
Mayor Hellier.
Yes. And now I guess we need a motion for the contract on Pivot.
That'll be the subject of the executive session to talk about the negotiated positions of the revised contract. Should we accept the revisions, we'll come back into public session with that motion.
That's fine. Next thing on the agenda is public comments. And these are public comments related to town services or business conduct. Are there any public comments?
Rod Schilling, 220 North Yale Pond Drive. It sounds like you guys are gonna go into executive session, talking about Pivot a little bit. I would urge maybe to take a look at a couple of things within that. I don't know how much analysis has been done about their effectiveness on the newly, the beach accesses, how much time they're actually spending in there, seeing who's supposed to be parked there and who's not. I don't know, we could easily probably see what kind of fines have been put in place. I know we've followed them around a little bit as a parking committee. Doesn't look like they spend a lot of time there, if any. I think that should probably be addressed. The other thing would be maybe their time that they're spending here. Right now, we're 7 to 7. Is it better off for us to be 9 to 9, 8 to 8? I don't know. 7 o'clock in the morning, not a lot going on. Plenty of time for coffee and donuts, I would imagine, for those guys. But in the evenings, and now that we have events like the hula thing, by the way, is what an awesome event that's been. Tons of people coming down to it. But at 7 o'clock, they go and it's a free for all. Then you got people parking everywhere. Then we're asking the city, I think, to come down and do the parking instead of Pivot that was hired to do the parking. So I think that's something that might want to be addressed. A little later hours might help out if we're going to make that work properly. Anyway, that's it.
All right, thank you, sir.
Hi, my name's John Hyatt. I live at 515 Lakeshore Drive in the town. Earlier in this meeting, the town council had an agenda item that said time for public comment. And we had a member of the public address the town council. And someone that's not on the town council interrupted this gentleman. And I pulled up the law. The law is 4-9-110 of South Carolina laws, and that person does not have the authority to interrupt council. So I would ask all of you to please reprimand people that intervene in your job and interrupt people that are making comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, now it's time for town council comments, because we'll have our comments now due to executive session. So we'll start out with Mr. Cracklaw. You'll be first tonight.
Well, thanks to everyone that came out, everyone that's listening. I have something I want to mention that I should have mentioned last week, but I forgot. And it's not a big deal, but we are a small community and we have a lot of vacationers, and vacationers have pets that get loose sometimes. And on the 4th of July, I actually found one of these pets on my evening walk. And since I was somewhat close to the police station, which I used to always think they took in pets and put them in pet jail or whatever until they found somebody, or the next day, and then they moved them on to Humane Society or wherever. I was told that they do not do that anymore, which I don't know, maybe I shouldn't really say anything publicly, but it's just as a citizen thing. I think that we should be accommodating to vacationers, especially on the 4th of July when dogs are scared as anything about fireworks, although this one seemed to be fine with them. But I was referred to, I don't remember which department, which almost sounded like Child Protective Services. I know that isn't who it was, but I wasn't gonna take that dog and turn it over to somebody because I knew somebody would be looking. And luckily, on the way back from the police station, I found the person looking for it. But I just think that maybe not the police should be responsible, but somehow the town should have a place where lost pets could be taken, at least for overnight until the owner could be found. So with that, see you next time.
Okay. Thank everybody for coming in and tuning in. I do feel like we still have a problem with line of sight. And I don't think you can do it with a truck. You've got to get down in a car. Because I drive a small car and I also drive an SUV, and the line of sight is an issue in a lot of places. But I also have a problem, and I've already talked to the administrator about this, but we had a second businessman come to us. You all heard what Lee had to say about the letter he got that threatened him. He had 10 days to jump through hoops and this, that, and the other. As a first contact, that is just wrong. I mean, I understand if somebody has refused, you've given them a call, you sent them a nice letter, and they refuse to do it, that's different. But in these cases, they're more than willing, once you tell them that there is a violation, they're more than happy to correct it. And I just really feel that this town is not treating our businesses fairly. And I'll go the same way with the citizens. If John finds somebody that's he thinks it's a violation, he shouldn't send him a threatening letter. There should be an explanation. And if nothing's done, then he can go to step 2. But there need to be a much smoother process instead of being adversarial. It's being on council, and this is from a business that's been here many years, always tried to do the right thing. And I mean, they've had issues with the town before, but they've always corrected them. And I just think of the adversarial approach is wrong, whether it be for a business or anybody in the community. We're law-abiding citizens for the most part. So I feel very strongly about this. That's why I'm not in favor of the section on Chapter 12. I think it can get out of hand. We live in a great town. We have a staff that does a wonderful job. We have a lot of representatives from the fire department. I'm glad to see them. And you know, just enjoy being here. The summer's going good. The water is as blue as I've ever seen. I've been here I've been swimming in the same spot for 62 years. I've never been able to see my feet when I'm up neck deep. So it's been a nice summer. And I hope you all be back here in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Great.
All right. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight and joining us, and people online too. The aspect of the right of ways, I think there's some more work needs to be done to it. It's, we're in a tourist area. In a tourist area, you're gonna have places for them to park. Parking areas are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the right of way belongs to the town. It doesn't belong to the homeowners. So not that you're being ugly or mean, but if the right of way is there available, if we have to make it pay as you go park or something, but it needs to be available for the tourists so they have a place to park. But that's about it. I'd like to thank the staff that showed up tonight, everybody that's here, and we'll see you next time.
Mr. Stanley.
Thanks for everybody coming. Thanks for hearing from the people who got up and spoke. I also am gonna make a comment about the same business owner that Mr. Kinkin was talking about. We need to do something as a town to get more friendly. We have the worst reputation of trying to get our businesses to stay. And when we have someone who has been in this town for many, many, many years, 2 of them now, that comes in and complains that they've got a letter, a nasty letter from town hall complaining about small stuff. If they would have just went in and talked to the owner, they could have solved that problem, and this person wouldn't be mad or aggravated. It wasn't that he was so mad. He was more aggravated that the town didn't give him the courtesy of coming in and speaking with him. So I was in this place of business, and this man sat down at the table where I was at and told me about what went on. And it's kind of dirty. I think that our staff, our paid people, were to be more considerate of these businesses. We want to keep these businesses. They pay a lot of money to this town, a lot. Why can't we be courteous? Why can't we walk into this business that we spend this time sitting down and sending them a nasty letter and making them mad? Why can't that person go in and say, you've got this problem, we need it fixed? And I'd say 90% of the time, the business owner will fix it. I do have a problem with that. And another thing I have a problem with is this deal with the parking. I also have went around and checked to see how they're doing on the crossovers. I've made my little watch of them, and they are not doing what I think they should be doing. So that is something we need to discuss in the executive session and look at it a little bit harder. With saying all that, thanks for coming again, and see you in 2 weeks.
Mr. Holder.
It's great to see all of you here tonight. I'd like to thank Karen for doing a great presentation on the Chamber of Commerce. It's very important that the relationship we have now and what we've done and making the money that we spend every year go further and to attract more business. Because right now, I love it. You'll go down and see every house and all the businesses doing well this summer. So that's great. I'd like to thank our fire department. What a turnout, guys. I think our whole fire department is here tonight. So thank you. It's good to see each of you here. So with that, I'm going to good night.
Ms. Keating.
Yeah, like everyone else, I want to thank everybody for coming out. It's nice to see our men in uniform, both from the police department and from the fire department. I appreciate you being here. Just a side note on a couple things. I mean, I agree with all the statements that were made about line of sight issues and cleaning up the obstructions and so forth. I mean, I have a big SUV and I have a little tiny Forte, and you're right, you get in the little cars, you can't see around a lot of the bushes. But again, you know, if we send the letter being, you know, I also agree with Mr. Stamey, being polite about it, you know, not threatening about it, saying, you know, we've had this issue, we've identified this problem, will you please, you know, trim back your landscaping, whatever. I mean, that should be our first step. And if that means, you know, we need to send somebody out and talk to them if there's a problem with it or whatever, you know, maybe it's a second homeowner that's not there all the time, who knows? But I agree, there are ways to take care of that. But I don't think we need to, as I mentioned earlier, hold up modifying the policy, modifying the ordinance for clarity's sake, and make sure, you know, when we see little issues that they're causing problems with even doing any kind of enforcement, whether that's on businesses or residents or on ourselves, you know, for what's in the right of way, you know, we need to make sure our ordinances are as clear and concise and understandable as possible. And I'd like to also address, you know, the other comment made that our town clerk is designated and has been appointed as our parliamentarian for this meeting. And it is her job to make sure that the meeting is conducted in accordance with the ordinance and the ordinance requirements for decorum and respectful comments. So, you know, it was not appropriate to say she was out of line, you know, stopping inappropriate comments, because that is her job as a designated parliamentarian, so. I also want to thank everybody, you know, I've been busy on Facebook typing thank you 50,000 times today. Or thank everybody for the birthday wishes, I appreciate it. It's not exactly how I wanted to spend my birthday, but it is what it is. So with that, I want to thank everybody, and as always, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you in a couple more weeks.
Well, we've heard a lot of progress on the pier and what's going on. We hear a lot of progress in everything that we're doing in the town, and our budget is getting worked on, and we've still got a lot of work to do. So basically, bear with us. We're going to get it done, and we're going to make sure that everybody gets the proper treatment that they need. So with that, I need a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to convene an executive session in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, Section 30-470A1, to discuss certain personnel issues, as well as in accordance with Section 30-4-70A2, to discuss potential negotiations and negotiating positions with beach services, and also consideration of the proposals received for the final lease space on the pier.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned, and we're going into executive session. You're welcome to wait outside.